All right, so he starts off with the Dodgers and he goes with Edwin Diaz. Now, I do think they need someone for the back end of the bullpen since they only ranked 22nd in ERA in the 9th inning last year and 21st overall in ERA. Now, to me, I do think they need to address an outfield spot more because Michael Conforto was a bust this past year for them, and they could leave Tommy Edman at second base, his natural position. Now, to me, I think Kyle Tucker makes a lot of sense for them, but we have gotten reports that the Dodgers may be more on the periphery for him. Now, if he's unable to get a long-term deal that he's looking for after dealing with injuries over the last couple of years, then maybe he could take a short-term high AAV deal. If not him, though, I think Steven Kwan could make a lot of sense because he would bring a high-contact bat to the lineup, which I do think the Dodgers could use a bit more of. If not Steven Kwan, I think Jarren Duran could be a fit as well. Speaking of Kyle Tucker, Passan names him as the perfect fit for the Blue Jays. Now, to me, I still think Bo Bichette is the best fit for Toronto. They don't really have anyone else knocking on the door at either shortstop or second base, unless they moved Addison Barger over to third base full-time and Ernie Clement to second base. But if Bichette ends up going elsewhere, they would definitely have some payroll space for Kyle Tucker. And if they did have Barger and Clement stay in the infield, then that would open up a spot for Tucker in the outfield. I mean, could you imagine a lineup with George Springer, Kyle Tucker, and Vlad Jr. to start things off?
Pretty good.
However, I've said it before, and I think the bigger need for the Blue Jays is starting pitching. Now, could they do both? Absolutely, but if I'm leaning one way, I would lean towards the pitching because Kevin Gausman is a free agent after next year, and other than Trey Savage, they don't really have a whole lot of youth, at least as of right now, ready to take over in the rotation. That's why I think they got to go after someone steady like Framber Valdez, maybe Dylan Cease. Perhaps they could take a chance on Tatsuya Imai out of Japan, but hey, Bo Bichette or Kyle Tucker and Framber or Cease or Imai, I think that'd be pretty good. On to the Mariners, and he has Josh Naylor. I agree. He was very good for them after the trade deadline. He hit great down the stretch and in the postseason. They don't have an obvious in-house answer at first base to take over, so I think it's time for the Mariners to break out the checkbook, which they usually don't do, to get it done. On to the Brewers, and here's an interesting one. Mackenzie Gore. Now, I disagree with this one. It's not the Brewers' style to go out there and trade for guys getting closer to free agency. Instead, they usually trade those guys away, so I don't see them giving up prospects for someone that they wouldn't have a lot of control over. Instead, I think they need to focus more on adding power to the lineup since they only ranked 22nd in home runs this past year, and they got shut down by the Dodgers pitching in the NLCS. Now, Pete Alonso or Kyle Schwarber would be perfect, but they're probably going to be too expensive for the Brewers. But maybe a shorter deal for someone like Eugenio Suarez. The AAV would probably cost a bit, but it would probably be a shorter deal because he just turned 34 years old. If not him, maybe Jorge Polanco is coming off a good year. He's had a bit of a track record here of injuries, so maybe that makes him end up being a bit cheaper. Or maybe they can turn to Ryan O'Hearn, who does have a bit of pop as well. On to the Yankees, and he says Cody Bellinger. Now, there's definitely a lot to like about Bellinger with the Yankees. He hit great at Yankee Stadium this past year, and I think his versatility between the outfield and first base fits the Yankees roster very well. I could also see the Yankees preferring that Bellinger would be a bit cheaper than Kyle Tucker, but I'll play a little devil's advocate. One thing about Bellinger last year is that his home and road splits were pretty different. Now, at home, he had over a 150 WRC+, but on the road, it was under 100. So, a part of me wonders if Kyle Tucker would be worth the investment for the Yankees. Funny enough, he had the opposite home road splits. He had a lot better on the road compared to what he did at Wrigley Field. So I say put Kyle Tucker at Yankee Stadium, and that man would absolutely feast. The question is, will the Yankees want to spend the big bucks on Tucker? If not, I think a Bellinger reunion makes a lot of sense, and I think they also need to target a leadoff hitter since they were pretty middle of the road in on-base percentage out of the leadoff spot last year. I think Brendan Donovan could make a lot of sense, would give them a good contact hitter at the top of the lineup while also giving them a lot of versatility, or maybe Steven Kwan if the Guardians do want to deal him. On to the Phillies, and Passan has Alex Bregman here. I disagree because I think they need to make an upgrade in the outfield, which only ranked 23rd in wins above replacement last year. I think they need to make an upgrade over Nick Castellanos in right field. His defense is not good out there. I think Castellanos needs to be more of a DH at this point, and I wouldn't be surprised at all to see them involved in Kyle Tucker. Now, if he's out of their price range, I could see a solid veteran hitter like like Ryan O'Hearn or maybe Mike Yastrzemski. Now, when it comes to Bregman, I don't see why they would do that, even if they moved Alec Bohm, because they have Aiden Miller, one of the top prospects in the game, coming up the pipe. And I think in the end, the best fit for Alex Bregman is to go back to the Red Sox. He fits like a glove at Fenway Park. He was great in the clubhouse. He brought some good leadership to Boston that they really needed. I think in the end, he should go back to the Red Sox. On to the Tigers, and he says Bo Bichette. I agree with this one. They need another bat in the lineup after struggling big time in the second half along with the postseason. They don't just need any bat, though. They need an impact bat. And Bichette, I think, makes a lot of sense to me. Defensively, he's probably more of a second baseman, but I could see the Tigers being okay with him at shortstop for the time being, just so they can get his bat into the lineup. However, it's going to be tough to pry him away from the Blue Jays, who I could see being very aggressive to keep him around. But if there is a team out there that has the urgency to add to the lineup and try to get a deal done, I think the Tigers make a lot of sense if they want to spend. For the Cubs, he has Tatsuya Imai. Could you imagine after declining the option on Shota Imanaga, they just turn around and sign another pitcher out of Japan in Imai? I mean, hey, we've seen crazier things, but hey, why not? I do think the Cubs need more stuff in the rotation, and Imai would definitely bring a lot of that. He's got solid breaking and off-speed stuff. But with Imai's fastball, though, he tends to have a bit more run on it, while the Cubs have seemed to prefer more ride on the fastball over the last few years, so I wonder if that could come into play. This is why I think Dylan Cease is the better fit, because he has more ride on the fastball, and he's more proven with the strikeouts. He led all of Major League Baseball this past year in strikeouts per 9, which the Cubs absolutely need more of. With the Padres, Jeff went a bit outside the box here and went with right-hander Cody Ponce, who's coming over from the KBO. Now, he's basically looking like the next Merrill Kelly or Eric Fetty. He struggled in the major leagues a while back, then he went to the NPB and KBO, and eventually found his way. Last year, he did great in the KBO, posted an ERA of 1.89 with over 12.5 strikeouts per 9. So he basically ties the Padres to him because he's saying that the Padres are still having some payroll issues. Now, I do wonder how big of an issue that actually is, because they did offer Michael King the qualifying offer, but they do have a lot of bad contracts on the payroll already in Manny Machado, Xander Bogaerts, and Yu Darvish, so I wonder if they would like to keep things a bit more conservative. So I can understand this move for sure, especially if Michael King and Dylan Cease end up going elsewhere. To me, though, I could see Michael King taking the qualifying offer after an up-and-down year with the injuries to try and help rebuild his value a little bit more, and then he can go back out to the market later on. And with Joe Musgrove coming back, the rotation should be pretty solid still moving forward, but I could see Ponce coming in and adding some depth there. But with the Padres, I think the bigger need is to add more power to the lineup since they rank near the bottom in home runs this past year. I think taking a shot on Munetaka Murakami out of Japan makes a lot of sense here. A lot of power coming over from Japan, but a lot of swing and miss, a lot of strikeouts. But the Padres have ranked very well at limiting the strikeouts over the last few years, as well as drawing walks. So I think they could help him in that department. If not him, though, maybe they could take a look at someone like Eugenio Suarez, who could play first base or DH, and they would be able to get him on a shorter deal. On to the Red Sox, and he is Joe Ryan here. I agree, not just with the fit, but I think they're good trade partners as well. I do think even if the Twins want to trade Joe Ryan after all the moves they made at the deadline, they're still going to want to stay in contention because they have a lot of young talent there, guys like Luke Keeschel, Brooks Lee, and the Red Sox can send back some guys that can help them right now that would have a lot of control that are young, say Connolly Early, maybe Peyton Tolley. You got Yostinson Garcia, the password. All of these guys are major league ready. Now, with Ryan, he has good action on the fastball, something the Red Sox do prefer with their fastballs, and most of the fly balls and line drives that he gives up goes out to center or right field, and with Fenway Park and the dimensions they have, I think that would fit very well, especially with Saydon out in center and Wilyer Abreu out in right. Now, in my opinion, I think he's a perfect number 2 behind Garrett Crochet, but I do pause a little bit. Now, Derek Falvey said recently he hasn't given much consideration of trading either Ryan or Pablo Lopez. Is that just posturing? Definitely could be. Or does he actually want to keep them? I think trading Ryan makes sense because he's going to want a big payday in a couple of years, and the Twins don't usually pay the big bucks. So maybe since they already have Pablo under contract, they decide to move Ryan and then hang on to Pablo, and they think they could still try to compete, especially if they get back some good young major league ready talent to add to the roster. And if they do move him, I could absolutely see a team like the Mets showing interest. They have good prospects with young pitching they could send back as well, so that could be an issue for the Red Sox too. By the way, big thanks to Bear Mattress for sponsoring today's video. If you're ready to upgrade your sleep, head to bearmattress.com/RobbieHyde and use code RobbieHyde to get 40% off your new mattress. So I've had my Bear Elite Hybrid mattress for the past few months now, and honestly, I don't know how I slept on my old one for so long. I would toss and turn all night, my back and hips would be barking at me in the morning, but with this mattress, I'm out within minutes, and I wake up every morning rested and pain-free. What's also great is Bear makes it very easy to find the perfect mattress for you. I took their quick sleep quiz, picked the firmness that fits how I sleep, and they shipped it straight to my door for free right here in the US. What I also love about Bear Mattress is they're fiberglass free and designed with Salient powered fabric to help you stay cool throughout the night. Also, in a 2024 Bear survey, 82% of customers said their sleep quality improved, while 95% would recommend Bear to a friend. They even back it with a limited lifetime warranty and a 120-night sleep trial, so you've got plenty of time to make sure that you love it. I seriously can't recommend it enough, so head to bearmattress.com/RobbieHyde and use the code RobbieHyde for 40% off your Bear mattress. Go get yourself the best sleep of your life and thank me later. On to the Reds, and he has Kyle Schwarber. Now, listen, I would love Schwarber to come to the Red Sox, but if he went anywhere else, I would love for him to go to his hometown Reds, but they just don't usually spend the money like that. The guy would probably hit 100 home runs there, and the Reds really need bats, so if there was ever a time for the Reds to spend some money, this would be it. But if not Schwarber, I think guys with decent pop who could elevate their game at their hitter-friendly park in Cincinnati could be Ryan O'Hearn, maybe Josh Naylor, or maybe a veteran like Mike Yastrzemski. For the Guardians, he has Brendan Donovan. I like the fit here because he has a ton of versatility, so when Travis Bazan is ready to come up and play second base, Donovan can just move somewhere else, maybe the outfield, but I have a bit of pause though because the Guardians, I think, need more thump in the lineup since they only ranked 29th in slugging percentage last year. Now, don't get me wrong, Donovan is a solid hitter, and I don't hate the idea, but he's more of a contact guy. I think the Guardians need to add more pop to the lineup, but the problem with the Guardians is they're not going to spend a whole lot of money, so maybe they can go for someone cheaper like Jorge Polanco, who is coming off a good year, but because of the injury history, you're probably going to be able to get him on a shorter deal at a lower AAV. If not him, maybe they can go the trade route for someone like Wilyer Bray or Jarren Duran. For the Mets, Passan has Framber Valdez. Now, I do think the Mets need a top-of-the-rotation starter, but I have a hard time seeing David Stearns going after a pitcher with a high price tag. Now, since he's gotten there, he's leaned more towards the buy low, high reward guys like Luis Severino and Clay Holmes, but hey, maybe there is a first time for everything. But I think a trade is going to be more likely for someone like Joe Ryan, Pablo Lopez. Maybe you can go after Freddie Peralta if he's available. Maybe you can do an in-division trade with the Nationals for someone like Mackenzie Gore. I do think they have the assets to go get a trade done because they have good prospects there with young pitching that they could package in a deal to try and land one of these more established guys. But I have a hard time seeing Framber Valdez being the fit here, not just because of the price tag, but he had the whole cross-up situation in Houston with his catcher this past year. And reports are saying lately that David Stearns does want to improve the clubhouse culture. So would he want to bring someone in like Framber after the incident like that? On to the Orioles, and he has Dylan Cease. This one makes a lot of sense to me. They need arms, especially guys with stuff, after ranking 26th in Stuff Plus among their starting pitchers last year. Now, like I said earlier, Cease did have an up and down year, but he still ranked first in strikeouts per 9 this past season. The problem here is, will the Orioles be willing to commit to a big money, long-term deal? They didn't want to go past 4 years for Corbin Burns, so would they do this for Cease? I do think there's an argument for it, but based off of what they've been willing to spend and how long they're willing to commit, I could see someone like Ranger Suarez making more sense because he has had some durability issues, so I wonder if that's going to prevent him from getting a really long-term deal. Could you maybe get him on a 4-year deal, maybe 4 years at an option, maybe 5 years? I could maybe see the Orioles going for that since they didn't want to go past 4 years for Corbin Burns. And I could also see them active in the trade market, maybe for a guy like Joe Ryan, Mackenzie Gore, Freddie Peralta, if they were available and they wanted to go that route. For the Giants, Passan has Devin Williams. I like this fit a lot. They traded away 2 of their best relievers last year in Taylor Rogers and Camille Duvall, while Randy Rodriguez had to get Tommy John, so they could definitely use someone at the back end of the bullpen. And they also have a solid infield defense, and with Williams getting a good amount of ground balls, I think that would be a great fit. Now, with Devin Williams this past year with the Yankees, a lot of ups and downs. ERA didn't look great, but the metrics still looked very solid. But in a spacious ballpark in San Francisco, there would be more room for error there, so I think Williams would be a nice fit. On to the Braves, and he has Robert Suarez. I like this one because the Braves bullpen was up and down last year, so they could use a solid arm like Suarez. Now, this is going to depend on what happens with Raisel Iglesias, who did have a bad first half last year, but a lot better in the second half. They did hang on to him at the trade deadline. Maybe a reason for that was they wanted to try and keep him long term, so I don't know if that comes into play here, but if he does go elsewhere, I think Robert Suarez makes a lot of sense. Now, if they do re-sign Iglesias, I think someone with a bit more flexibility could make some sense because you don't know what you're going to get out of Iglesias this coming year. Is he going to be the first half Iglesias or the second half version? So I think someone that could close games or set up would be the nice option. That way you have a fallback option in case you needed to take Iglesias out of the closer role. Someone like Luke Weaver, who has done solid at both the setup and closer role over the last couple of years, or Devin Williams. For the Royals, Passan has Gleyber Torres. Now, to me, I think they would be better off getting an outfielder, but then again, if they want a more steady option at second base over Jonathan India and Michael Massey, then I think Gleyber could be an option here. However, I don't think he's a great fit at Kauffman, which is better suited for more gaps hitters, while Gleyber is more of an on-base guy with a bit of pop, and his power would go down a lot at Kauffman. So I think a better fit would be an outfielder, someone like Jarren Duran, who ranked 5th in doubles this past year and 2nd in triples. He's very good with the gaps. I think he would fit great at that ballpark. On to the Astros, and Passan has Michael King. Now, I like this a lot if he doesn't go back to the Padres. He had a down year this year because of the injuries, like I mentioned earlier, and with the Astros being more modest spenders in free agency over the years, I wonder if they could get King on a shorter, cheaper deal that could have an opt-out, so King could go back out to the free agent market later on after rebuilding his value. Now, like I said earlier, the Padres did offer him the qualifying offer, which I could see him taking since he has the familiarity in San Diego, but if he does go elsewhere, I think the Astros could be a great fit. He gets a good amount of ground balls, and with the Astros' good infield defense, that works well together. I think he could be a solid veteran guy to go with Hunter Brown at the top of the rotation, with Framber Valdez probably going elsewhere. On to the Rangers, and he has Munetaka Murakami. I don't know about this one. Now, with Murakami, we all know the deal. Lots of power coming out of Japan, but also a lot of strikeouts and very low contact. Now, sure, they could use an upgrade over Jake Berger after his down season, but with the Rangers and their struggles offensively this past season, I think they need more of a sure thing, and I don't think this is the right way to go. I think they need to go after more of a proven hitter. Now, what I think they need are guys that can get on base, since they only ranked 18th this past year, but reports are saying lately so far this offseason that they don't plan to spend a lot of money, so I think you could go after someone for first base, and Berger can DH, so I think someone more on the modest side, someone like Ryan O'Hearn, or maybe they can do a trade for someone like Yandy Diaz. On to the Diamondbacks, and Passan has Pete Alonso. Now, I like this one a little bit. They did let Christian Walker go last year, but after spending big on Corbin Burns last offseason, I'm not sure they're going to go this route and spend big again, but Alonso would be a nice fit in the middle of that lineup. But for me personally, since they already have a lot of good bats, I think they need to focus more on the pitching staff. Now, sure, try to bring back guys like Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly to keep the rotation intact, maybe add another guy there, but I also think they need to add to the bullpen. That bullpen was very bad this past year, only ranked 28th in Fangraph wins above replacement. I think a solid closer that you can count on every single night would be a very good investment. Now, they have shown interest in Ryan Helsley in the past on the trade market, who was great before going to the Mets, so maybe he could be an option, maybe Edwin Diaz, or maybe another guy that has experience in the NL West in Robert Suarez. And last but not least, for the Athletics, Passan has Rangers Suarez. I think this is a great idea, and I would love for the A's to go out there and spend on another arm like they did last year for Luis Severino, because that rotation really does need help. They only ranked 29th in starting pitching F4 this past year, and they had the second highest home run per 9 rate. Now, with Suarez, I think he would be an awesome fit because he's had a very low home run rate over the last few years. The 16th lowest, actually, going back to 2022. The only problem is, will the A's spend the money? I hope they do. If they were to go a cheaper route, I think a reunion with Chris Bassett would make a lot of sense because he's also done very well at limiting the home runs. I think a solid veteran like him atop the rotation with Severino could go a long way. And because he is starting to get up there in age now, maybe you can get him on a shorter deal. I think that would would be a really nice fit. But everybody, that is it for Jeff Passan's article here today. There were some ideas that I thought were great, but there were some that I really disagreed with as well. So let me know down below in the comments your thoughts on Jeff Passan's perfect offseason moves. I would love to see what you think. And let me know some of your own perfect offseason moves. I would love to see what you got to say. But everybody, that's all I got for this video. If you can on the way out, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and I'll talk to you next time.